Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 0. And this is the third episode, I think now, of 00 answering your Quora questions. Again, if you want to pitch me a lore question about Halo or more or less anything else and want my opinion on or answers to your questions, pop over to the Quora link in the description down below and I'll get round to answering your questions. In the meantime, here's another 10 questions that I was asked over on Quora. Why isn't the UNSC Army present in Halo 2 or Halo 3 during the Battle of Earth? The UNSC Army was present during Halo 2 and Halo 3. The only reason we don't see them is because the story focuses on and follows the exploits of the Master Chief, a soldier from the UNSC Navy, supported predominantly by Marines. The Army remains an essential and integral branch of the United Nations Space Command Defense Force, or the UNSCDF, even in the 26th century. It is simply because the story of Halo is told across numerous locations in space, which requires spaceships to get to, and all human spaceships are operated by the Navy. In the game Halo Reach, the primary human fighting force that we come across there are the Army, because the story is focused on the singular planet of Reach, following Spartan 3 Noble team that served under the Army's operational authority. Can you make sense of Halo Season 2 for me? Nothing about it makes any sense at all. Well, it's difficult to sum up all of the subtleties of an entire season of a TV show in a single response, so instead I'll highlight the major overarching plot points that I feel influence the story most significantly. Season 2 carries on some of the major plot points from Season 1 with the added complexities of the fall of Reach. We have to bear in mind here that the Halo TV show differs fundamentally from the mainline lore in a few key ways that have profound effects on how events play out thereafter. For me, one of the most significant and profound changes was the manner in which the Spartan 2s were conscripted and trained. In mainline lore, Dr. Halsey resigned to the idea that she had to tell the 6-year-old conscripts the truth of why they were taken and why they'd never see their families again. Lying to the children would only cause resentment if they were to ever find out the truth. On top of this, her AI suggested using selective amnesia and hormonal control drugs to wipe portions of their early life, which Halsey flatly refused to do, as it could have had bleed-over effects to other areas of the brain, and the risks they'd have to face were tough enough without having to navigate the additional obstacles of mind and hormonal manipulations. These decisions were made so that the Spartan candidates would learn to trust the UNSC and the chain of command. They'd know the truth, and thus never have any reason to doubt or resent the UNSC. In Season 1, Halsey makes the polar opposite decisions. She chooses to lie to the children about their families, and chooses selective amnesia and hormonal control. This has exactly the effects previously described. John realizes he was lied to, that he was stolen away from his family, and that the story of a plague sweeping across his homeworld was a lie. He discovers his family have since been neutralized by the Office of Naval Intelligence, and also, following the comments from a fellow AWOL Spartan, removes his hormone regulator chip, freeing himself of the drug's influence. With Cortana's help, he unlocks his repressed memories, and all of the shock, disbelief, grief, anger and rage all bubble to the surface simultaneously. Oni and Halsey then have one of humanity's greatest weapons and most recognizable war heroes in full revolt against them. However, he is also still guided by his own moral compass and his desire to protect people. He is still waking up to who he truly is, so never fully revolts as the Covenant still poses a looming threat to humanity. So he sets his own personal problems with Oni aside and focuses on being humanity's greatest warrior. That rounds out Season 1, but the ripples of effect from this plot point become one of, if not the, major plot point of Season 2. Season 2 focuses on the story of John becoming who he is meant to be, the Master Chief. and reclaiming his name, his authority, reputation, and his likeness from the Office of Naval Intelligence, who had been using him and his image to push false propaganda and manipulate the masses, and himself, for decades. The fall of Reach and the interference and manipulations of Oni complicate this matter significantly, adding layers of narrative complexity which can feel a little disjointed at times, but all serve to keep Oni and John's chances at retribution at a distance. Oni was fully committed at this stage to leaving John and his loyal Spartans on Reach to die, hence why when they left for Onyx, they took their suits with them. John, however, being perpetually lucky, managed to survive the fall of Reach and pursue Oni for one simple reason: to reclaim his armor and to become who he knew he had to be for humanity's sake. This meant metaphorically and literally rising up against the very organization that had turned him into a Spartan. Season 2 closes with the Chief now fully acting on his own volition, using his own judgment and moral compass to guide his decisions, becoming a closer resemblance to the Master Chief we all know from the games, which is where Season 2 more or less comes to a close. At this point, Paramount Plus has dropped Halo and over a dozen other shows as it merges with HBO Max, leaving Season 3 shelved until another platform decides to pick it up and restart or reboot work on Season 3, which should ultimately follow the events of Halo CE. Is there a canon explanation for everything in Halo 4 looking completely different than the prior games? Examples such as the Forerunner to Dawn and Halsey's flashback to the Human Covenant War having Chief's nanobot armor. There is not a canon explanation for everything, no. The reality of the situation is simple. Halo 4 was to be 343 Industries' first fully original solo entry into the franchise. Because of this, 343 Industries wanted to put their own mark on the franchise to differentiate their work and somewhat distance themselves from the earlier works made by Bungie, as they believed this would gain them a little more creative freedom to move the plot in the direction they wanted. The aesthetic changes to the Forerunner to Dawn, Chief's armor, Spartans appearing in earlier cutscenes wearing this as of yet unseen Mjolnir variant, and the art style changes of the Covenant species were all a part of this rebranding and different direction that 343 Industries were hoping would be accepted. The reality, of course, didn't play out this way. So they retroactively came up with a canon explanation for some of the changes in an attempt to save face and smooth over the rather abrupt changes from Bungie era to 343 era games. This included nanomachines in Chief's armor that allowed Cortana to rebuild and alter Chief's Mark 6, and the Covenant species being of a different phenotype than the variants previously seen. But of course, these were just retroactive lore drops to smooth things over with a fan base that broadly rejected the new direction. When push comes to shove, it was simply a failed attempt to distance themselves from the legacy of Halo that the fan base didn't respond well to. What's going on in the background of Halo Infinite? Are all the Spartans dead? What happened to Fireteam Osiris? Is Earth safe? Most Spartans at this stage have been suggested as being killed, leaving Chief and a few others as the sole remaining Spartans. Halo Infinite was a soft reboot for the franchise and followed the recipe of Halo CE. During Halo CE, Chief was thought to be the last of his kind, the last Spartan, as the events of Halo CE immediately followed the fall of Reach, the military stronghold of humanity, to the Covenant. During the fall of Reach, all Spartans were recalled to Reach to help defend the colony, and yet, to most people's understanding, Chief was the only one who made it off the planet. Halo Infinite follows this same sentiment, with Chief being believed to be one of, if not the last Spartan. The reality, of course, is that in both CE and Infinite, Chief is not the last Spartan. The others are just unseen and likely busy doing other missions at this stage. That being said, the death toll of Spartans to the banished and/or created in Infinite outpaces the Spartan death toll of even the fall of Reach, so the severity of the situation should not be understated. As for Earth, up until Cortana's sacrifice, Earth was under constant observation and subjugation by the created. After her sacrifice, however, it is assumed Earth began to rebuild its forces and re-establish itself as humanity's homeworld once more. What happened to Shepard after the ending of Mass Effect 3? The canon ending, being the destroy ending of Mass Effect 3, sees the Reapers being destroyed hypothetically alongside all synthetic life, and the destruction of the mass relays effectively cutting off rapid transit across the galaxy. The best ending available in Mass Effect 3 sees the final scene showing Shepard's body led amongst the debris of London and the fallen Reapers, and at the last possible moment, Shepard takes a breath. From this ending, it is implied that Shepard survived the Reaper War, and despite being injured was likely healed and rehabilitated, and then likely helped a thankful galaxy re-establish itself thereafter, likely aiding humanity and the other species in rebuilding and expanding once more. At this point, however, it is anyone's guess if the galaxy remained safe for long, following the fall of the Reapers. Why do the elites team up with the humans in Halo 2 to 3? The simple answer is that the elites had been lied to by the Prophet since the beginning of the Human Covenant War, and in reality, since the beginning of the Covenant itself some 3,000 years ago. The lie was that the Great Journey was a path that their gods walked and could be followed by those loyal to the religion, that using the Halos would light the path and make all who believe the promise of the sacred rings gods. The reality, of course, is that the Halos are simply weapons of last resort built by the Foreigners, the species the Covenant mistakenly revered as gods, to wipe the galaxy clean of sentient life, effectively starving the parasitic organism known as the Flood to death. A further lie was that humanity was an affront to the gods and must be extinguished to their last, when in reality, humans were chosen by the Foreigners to be the inheritors of their legacy, meaning the nearly 30-year war with the humans was not only entirely pointless, but scattered to the winds the will of the gods themselves. As the old saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Who would win, the Gravemind from Halo versus the Leviathan from Mass Effect? It's difficult to say with exact certainty, as we never fully see the capabilities of the Leviathans in Mass Effect. That being said, based solely on what we know about the Leviathans from Mass Effect and the Gravemind from Halo, it is highly likely that the Gravemind would entirely dominate the Leviathan. The Gravemind is an intellect of immense sophistication and power, possessing the collected knowledge of trillions of individuals from thousands of different species, including the knowledge of the Precursors, a preeminent species in the Halo universe that could be credited with the creation of life across countless worlds in the Milky Way, including humanity and the Forerunners themselves. Even on a purely biological basis, the Flood supercell is capable of infecting and self-replicating within a host's body with seemingly no issue whatsoever. Even a single Flood spore is capable of entirely infecting and taking over the central nervous system of a host, given enough time. So even on this basis, the Gravemind wins. Is there a difference between laser blasters, like in Star Wars, and plasma weapons, like Covenant weapons in Halo? The difference from a physics perspective is actually quite simple. Laser blasters seemingly use beams of photons as their projectile, meaning, in theory at least, the projectiles move at close to the speed of light, but impart very little kinetic energy because photons don't have any mass, instead dumping intense energy into the target in the form of heat and radiation, burning the target or carbonizing the target with enough exposure, or otherwise dosing them with lethal levels of radiation. Plasma weapons, however, use an ionized superheated gas contained within an electromagnetic bubble. These projectiles have markedly more mass than lasers, but are also more volatile upon impact. When these rounds impact a target, the intense heat from the plasma causes the flash vaporization of bodily fluids. This can lead to complete dismemberment and blast injuries, as well as severe deep tissue penetrating burns and lethal radiation doses, depending on the type of ionizing taking place within the plasma. In the Halo video game series, why are the Flood so powerful compared to other species in terms of technology and power? Because they are a compound mind. Once a coordinated intelligence is created from available biomass, the transcendent intellect of the Gravemind manifests, containing the collected intelligence of all that the Flood has infected. The Flood not only mutates the physical forms of their hosts and takes control of their nervous system, but also filters through their thoughts, memories, and knowledge, to gain skills that may help the proliferation of the Flood across the galaxy. All of this information is retained and stored in a metaphysical manner via a property known as neural physics. This means that every single thought, memory and ounce of knowledge from every single one of the trillions upon trillions of hosts across thousands upon thousands of species over hundreds of thousands of years are all immediately accessible by the Gravemind. When you fight the Flood, you are fighting every single entity that has ever fallen victim to the Flood infection, personified by the ruling intelligence of the Gravemind. Why didn't Serena wake up the rest of Red Team to help Jerome during the Flood outbreak? Likely because the Flood infestation was rather limited and only one Spartan was really needed to quell the infection. Serena is an AI and thus couldn't physically interact with the Flood or aspects of the ship to contain and destroy the Flood herself, but waking up too many people from cryo to deal with the infection may inadvertently cause more casualties and thus strengthen the Flood infection's grip on the ship. Activating a single Spartan, who just so happens to be extremely proficient at killing and wears a suit that keeps them majoritively safe from infection, makes more strategic sense, as it meets deadly force with deadly force, adequately protects the other crew on board, only risks one single life, with odds stacked heavily in their favour, and in the case the Spartan failed, it's only a single person that falls victim to the infection, not adding too much insurmountable strength to the infection. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, consider hitting the subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss out on future content, and hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. It really does help the channel out significantly. Feel free to pop a comment below on anything you'd like me to cover next, and before signing off I just want to give a shout to my Patreon supporters, Spartan10148, my singular contender class ancilla, Falcon, Jordan and Poseidon, the metarchs of my facility, Sylphia, Ashley, Esoteric, Spartan 1029 and Chris Allen, my dutiful monitors, Darian, Legion, Labrat, Spartan 137, Chris, Element 0, J3, Mr. Keys, Gunslinger Cult, Evermore's Personal Devil, Scion Esports and Saber, my diligent sub-monitors, my dominating fleet of Strato Sentinels, and my loyal enforcers, and all other patrons who continue to support the channel. I can't thank you guys enough. Big props to my Tier 0 YouTube members, Spartan 137, Talia, Fenrir, Bornstella and Jimbo, and all other YouTube members keeping the installation running on that glorious vacuum energy. And if you really love what I'm doing here, consider supporting the channel via the links in the description. Much love, take it easy, and find peace in the domain.